Hey, I'm Brian Holders with Root Cause, and today we're going to talk about tree service equipment. We're standing inside our storage unit. This is a 20-foot shipping container, and we've got all kinds of stuff in here. It's actually relatively clean at the moment because I cleaned this out a couple of months ago during the COVID shutdown. We didn't work for a little while, so I took everything out of here, swept it, cleaned it up, put it all back together. It's becoming a bit of a mess again, but we've got a lot of stuff crammed in here, so I'm going to show you guys a few things. So I'll start with our tree climbing gear. This is something that we at Root Cause don't do a whole lot of, but we do a certain amount of tree pruning, tree removal that involves climbing. At Root Cause, most of what we do is we deal with soil and root issues, underground tree services. Our guys are specialized in doing the work that we do at or below grade. So none of them really climb, so I'm the old guy, so I get to do most of the climbing. But recently I got a new climbing harness. It's got a nice wide belt for your back. It's got leg stirrups, and then it's got these what we call floating D-rings that we tie the rope into that go back and forth, and that allows us to, you can either use a single system or a split tail system, so you're tied in one or two parts and they move. It's got D-rings on the sides. That's for your flip line, and of course it's got little rings for carrying. This is what attach to your chainsaw, and on this side I like to carry my handsaw, my weight bags. So that's your climbing harness. I had a Buckingham harness. My original harness I got in 1996, and I had that until recently. And this is the modern version. It's leather, and it's not near as heavy as the ones used to be. And frankly, it's a lot more comfortable to sit in for hours on end. When we're removing trees, we wear climbing spikes. Climbing spikes go over your shoes, and they tie into they attached just below the knee, as well as around the boot. And that spike allows you, we only use these when we're removing trees. If the tree's going to be removed, it doesn't matter if we damage it, because the spike severely damages the bark of the tree. But this allows us to climb the stem of the tree, and we just kind of stick that in and sort of create a step. Knowledgeable arborists only use the climbing spikes when we're removing a tree. Got a bunch of ropes. I got a new rope here I haven't even taken out of the package yet. This is generally a rigging rope. A lot of times when you're in a tree, you have one rope that you the climber is attached to, then you got one rope that you're using to rig limbs out and wood out of the tree, and you don't want those to be confused. The guys on the ground. So we'll try to use two ropes that are far apart in color, so they don't accidentally grab the wrong one and start yanking on it and yank me out of the tree or whatever. I like to use this True Blue. It's kind of a mess right now, but for climbing rope, is because it's kind of soft, and the type of knot that I like to use works well with the True Blue. This stable braid rope dries out faster, and we like to use this for rigging rope. This is actually a 5/8 inch. I generally go with a 5/8 inch. Your big rope would be a 3/4 inch, but I don't even have one of those at this time, so that should tell you we don't do a lot of big removals anymore. I'm going to show you attached to the harness is a flip line, and this is just an extra flip line. When you're in the tree, you use this kind of like a short rope that goes around the trunk of the tree, and you're attached to it. I got different lengths. So we have one for really big trees. This is a friction device, so that when you're tied into it and you got pressure on it, it locks into place. But then if you take your weight off of it, it's easy to move it, in one direction or another. Of course, a carabiner would attach that to your harness. Just allows you to sit steady in one place. A lot of times for the purpose of making a cut. A lot of times, even if you're hanging on the rope, we'll use the flip line, attach that to a limb nearby to kind of help hold us in position to cut the rope. to make the cut. The flip line has always got a steel core. You can see that's a quarter-inch cable, and that way if you happen to cut this with your saw, you won't cut through it and fall out of the tree, which would be very bad. So this nylon line, sometimes from the ground, you attach a weight to this and throw it up into the tree. It allows us to set to, and then once you get this thing set into the tree, you take the weight off and you tie the rope onto that end and you pull the rope back over. It allows you to set your rope from the ground. Different lengths or different sizes of these. These are felling wedges. That helps when you're, typically we just use these on the ground, not always, but typically use these on the ground when we're trying to force the trunk of the tree to fall in one direction or another. We got different sizes of felling wedges. We got basically long, medium, and short ones. You can see I broke that somehow. It's possible I hit it with the chainsaw. Part of the reason they're plastic is that it's really easy. When you're tired or whatever, it's easy. Sometimes this work is dangerous, and you sometimes hit these with your saw. You try not to, obviously, but sometimes you do. And when you do, it'll damage the plastic, but it won't damage your chain. Oh my goodness. Oh, there's something else that I have not used in a long time. I used to use it a lot when I did a lot more big removals. This is a friction device. You would literally put this thing, oh my gosh, it's been a while. Just goes to show you, I don't do a lot of this anymore. There's a reason we go by root cause, because we mostly deal with roots. But you would tie this around the trunk of the tree. You can see it's pretty long. And then the guys on the ground, you wrap your rope around this, maybe once here and twice here, whatever, and that helps. It's like having an extra guy. It really slows the descent of the fall. You can see this thing was bright red when I got it. And if you look closely, you could still see some red. But I probably had this for over 20 years. Like I say, it was bright red when I got it, and that paint is long gone. So we got our money's worth out of this one. On the table here, we got a bunch of miscellaneous stuff. It's this is just a little angle grinder that we use sometimes, because again, a lot of what we do is the underground stuff to remove metal grates. Sometimes they're welded in place, and so this just allows us to make a cut with cut metal. Of course, it plugs in. Then you got these little spinner wheels that grind it off. We got some safety gear for some of the guys. The guy that runs the mixer when we do porous pave, that's Mike. These are Mike's pants. On your pants, they're never the same again. Okay, you got to wear special pants, because if that glue doesn't come off. This is the glue that we use for the porous pave. It's a mixture of rubber, rock, and glue, which we make in a mortar mixer. And again, the glue is you can see what it's done to the material here. It's natural. It has the byproduct of waterproofing the pants. So let's see, what do we got on the table here? We've got a pressure washer. Sometimes we make a mess, so sometimes when we make a mess, we got to clean it up. Helps us clean sidewalks after air excavation that we do. We do air excavation. Sometimes, dirt gets everywhere, and this allows us to clean sidewalks. We got an all-purpose lifting chain. You can never have enough chain. It's got a couple of hooks on it. We use that to pick stuff up. Yeah, that's a useful tool. It doesn't look like much, but let me tell you something. That is a useful tool. When you can hook it to the bucket of the Bobcat and pick something up that's 1,000 pounds or whatever, that you're never gonna, I don't care how many guys you got, you're never gonna pick it up. It's pretty awesome. Got a jackhammer. We don't use this very often, but when you do, it goes with one of the towable air compressors. We use this to break up concrete or old asphalt sometimes, and you talk about a work saver. This is sometimes known as an air chipper, and you put a small jackhammer bit in there, and that allows you to break up something smaller, but it's handheld, a lot lighter. We've even used this at times to break up clay soil when we're trying to expose or get to roots that need to be pruned, and the soil is so hard and the air knife won't, no matter how much we water it, sometimes the air knife just won't cut through it, and we use this little air chipper for that. Let's keep going around the room here. Big air knife that we rarely use because that requires a really big air compressor. But I've used this before, and this thing will blow grass right out of the ground. It's pretty cool. Oh, here's a little tool that we use once in a while. This is a soil penetrometer. Now the glass is broken from it. This is something that allows you to tell if soil is compacted. This is an old tool I got out of a farming catalog. If you got to push that, there it goes. If you got to push that hard, it tells you, can you see the needle going there? It tells you if it stays, in the green, maybe your soil is okay. But if it's as hard as that, and I'm putting all my body weight on it, and that tells you the soil's severely compacted, and it's probably not going to grow anything. What do we got here? We've got some panels for root barrier. A lot of times we'll install this either with new or fairly newly planted trees near a sidewalk. And we'll install this barrier so that when the tree, obviously the roots are going to grow out, so that they don't break the sidewalk, we want it to hit this barrier and go down. Ridges actually hold on to the soil or subgrade to keep the roots, because over time, if this is just a flat surface, over time, a root could push against it and just push this whole thing out of the ground over the course of years, and this helps hold it in place. These are interlocking. What else we got? We got a number of chains for our different saws that need to be I've got separated by size. We have when we do porous pave, a lot of times we have to, in order to install it level, we use a plastic edging called a snap edge, and that allows us to get so that we can put the material in level. And a lot of times we have to use these small pieces of rebar to drive these things 2 feet into the ground in order to hold that snap edge in place. A lot of times we've got a foot or more of gravel, and then on top of soil. So this sometimes we need these because the 9-inch spikes that come with the snap edge sometimes aren't long enough to really hold it in place. So cutoff saw. This is it's the same power head as a chainsaw, but this is specifically designed to cut metal or rock, depending on what type of a cutter wheel you have on it. Obviously, it spins at a rapid rate. It's got some level of bits of diamond here on the ends, and again, that allows us to cut rock or cut metal. It's got a variety of chainsaws here. No matter where you keep your chainsaws, there's always going to be I just cleaned this, and there's always going to be that pool of oil. That's bar oil, and it just seems to make its way out of saws. A brand new saw might not leak oil, but before long they do. This is probably a 30-inch bar, you got a 24-inch bar, you got a 20-inch bar, then you got a couple what we call top handle climbing saws. All we use at root cause are steel saws, and that's all I've ever used. There are other companies now that make good saws, but back when I came up, when I was learning this business, there was steel and there was Husqvarna, and then Husqvarna went downhill, and I started using steel only, and I'm very happy with it. It's really important, no matter what kind of saw you use, to make sure your chain brake works. So when this saw is traveling at a high rate of speed, you're making a cut, you fall or something happens. So you always want to make sure you got a functioning chain brake so that doesn't cut you or cut your fingers or severely hurt you. So, and periodically those do break, but when they break, you get new ones because it's totally worth having. Well, the bigger the saw is, you can see the power head. The power head is bigger. Generally speaking, a bigger power head is going to run a bigger bar, which is going to have a beefier chain, which is going to cut wood faster. I mean, when you got to cut a piece of wood that's 2.5 feet in diameter, that's fat. That's fat wood, and you want a lot of juice to get through it, and and ideally a really sharp chain. So, also on this table, under this table we got a bunch of miscellaneous parts for irrigation, because we replace and repair a lot of irrigation. is part of our work at doing tree protection on construction sites. The thing about the Northwest climate is that it's an unusual climate in that, you know, we get soft, rainy climate for 8-9 months of the year, and then we can go through 3-4 months with no rain at all. And particularly on construction sites, when you alter the natural environment of the tree, that's really stressful. So we'll set up systems to allow artificial irrigation even of mature trees, and it can be really helpful. We've got a extension pruner. It allows us to, you know, to cut small tree limbs. I had a guy that taught me years ago, when you get out of the truck, the first thing you do is put on your hard hat. There's hazards everywhere. Hazards everywhere. You know, go through a lot of caution tape. Most of the work we do is on the ground, and so we got to string this stuff up so the pedestrians look out not to step into our tree pit, not to step into our forest pave, not to step into a trench that we've created. So we use a lot of caution tape. Let's see. This thing looks like nothing, but it's one of the most useful tools known to man, which is a plate compactor. Basically, this thing is what makes this thing work is the weight. It is called a vibratory compactor. And when we're putting in porous pave, we got to compact the surface with gravel so that it will hold up our material and not collapse over time. And you start this thing up and run it around, and like I say, it weighs, I don't know, about 60 or 80 pounds, and it just sits on there and just packs everything down real tight. And that's a pretty cool machine. I got a giant socket set filled with every conceivable socket wrench and socket fitting that you could ever want. I'd say the single most important tool, which is true in almost any job, is your head protection. Right? This is a climbing helmet, but I frequently wear this climbing helmet even when working on the ground. I like the strap so that it doesn't fall off. It's got adjustable rollers so you can tighten or loosen it, so obviously that protects your head. Then it's got these flip down ear muffs. I don't like loud noise. It's only the hardest part of this job for me is having to deal with loud noise. So I muffle that loud noise out any way I can. So hearing protection is a big piece. Another big piece of safety equipment is your eye protection. Basic $5 Lowe's hardware safety glasses. I buy these by the 4-pack. And I've gone through lots of them. I don't like the expensive ones because no matter what I get, they get scratched. So no matter if you're pruning a tree, removing a tree, root pruning, digging a hole next to a tree, fixing a sidewalk, doesn't matter. The first thing you do every time is look for hazards, right? What are the hazards? What are the things that are there that could potentially hurt me or hurt one of my employees, or that could ultimately lead to injury or another person being hurt. So the first thing you do is look for hazards. Now, whether above ground, when you're dealing with trees, there are a lot of hazards above ground, particularly there are a lot of electrical hazards above ground. So when you're looking at a tree, the first thing you look for is, are there wires in or near the tree? Determine if there's an electrical hazard, step one. And the same is true below ground. The problem is that below ground, you can't necessarily see what's there, but you got it one way or the other. You got to find out if there's an electrical hazard, you know, underneath the tree or in the zone where you'll be working. We work a lot on construction sites, big construction companies, and they got all these things and these safety meetings, and you got to create this site plan. How we're going to stay safe on the job site, and of course we roll our eyes at it because it's a lot of extra paperwork. I will say this: there is no downside to constantly talking about, thinking about, discussing, making plans for safety. There's no downside to that. It's irritating. You know, we don't want to do it. We think it's stupid. I get that. And I'm right in there. I don't want to fill out 5 more forms either. But a lot of the point of that is just to get us to stop, slow down, think about it, and make sure that we look out for hazards and that we are intentionally safe.